All right. Welcome, Internet, to our podcast.
Well, welcome, web denizens. And it's another Friday. I'm back, actually. It's been a while since I've been on our live Q&A. And so I'm Paul Pway, CEO and co-founder of Edge, joined by co-founder William, and here to answer some questions that have come across our path over the past week and some stuff that you guys may are welcome to ask live here on Twitter, YouTube, and I can't remember what else we're broadcasting on, but we're triple broadcasting on the web. And so let's kind of kick it off and get started. We only do this for about half an hour, and a lot to talk about that occurred over the week. And so I know one major question that's kind of come up for a lot of people, we were aware of this coming down the pipe, is the new announcement from Shapeshift.
Shapeshift are requiring KYC now.
Yes, they are. They're requiring people to create a membership, and I really like how they've spun this as there's some positives to this, and yet there's some negatives to this. And we're good partners with Shapeshift. I've known those guys for quite some time, and Justin's been a big supporter of what we're doing here at Edge. And I think what they're doing is they're taking lemons and making lemonade. Right, they're doing the best thing that they can. They've been huge innovators in the space, coming out with an accountless exchange that tries to solve a lot of the problems of a lot of centralized exchanges. And they've been great at that. They don't have custodial risk for more than just a few minutes, effectively, when you send your money to them to swap between different cryptocurrencies. That was
nobody hears about Shapeshift getting hacked.
Actually, people did once, but no one lost money.
Because they never had accounts with money.
People never had accounts where they held money with Shapeshift. And so when Shapeshift did get hacked, I think a year or two ago, the only money that was lost was Shapeshift's money. And that's a fundamentally different model than what people have been accustomed to with kind of very centralized exchanges. So I commend them for that. And that was one of their key goals and one of the things that they want to continue to achieve. Another goal, though, was privacy and anonymity and your own sovereignty of what you are doing, your transactions from anywhere for whatever purpose. And that now is kind of coming to a halt with the KYC measures.
Well, that's anytime you centralize anything into one thing, it's always going to be that. I mean, the only way I could think of to do a shapeshift without being in that position would be to have thousands of computers all running little micro exchanges. Like my computer has some Bitcoin and some Ether, and I'm anonymously trading between those two.
Right, exactly.
And in some way combine all those together into some kind of
almost like a Shapeshift mixer.
Yeah,
type of concept. And so unfortunately, they're not that.
No one's built that.
No one's built that at this point in time. And so there are decentralized exchanges, and that prevents you from having to create an account with an exchange that knows your specific transactions. But as we can...
But those are all very difficult to use, or they're immature. Or,
right. One of the huge challenges, of course, is there's many of them, and liquidity being a challenge. We were actually talking about this at the San Diego Blockchain Developers Meetup yesterday. Kylan, whose facility we're in right now, Kylan Hurt, actually gave a presentation on 0x protocol and how to build a decentralized exchange on it. But as was mentioned, there are a lot of friction points with the decentralized exchanges, some of which, like 0x, you have to actually have their token to pay for the fees. It's a very multi-step process to make an exchange. And there aren't really well baked out cross-chain user experiences, right? Things get much more tedious when you try to do a cross-chain like swap. And so Shapeshift does really well there. You don't care if it's a token to token, if it's a token to another coin, a coin to another coin.
It just works.
Yeah, it just works. Obviously, there's hiccups with any system, but overall, their system is smooth enough to achieve the success that they've had. And so, our take on this, how does that impact Edge? That's the main question that people are asking us, is that we will continue to offer Shapeshift as an integration partner inside of Edge, and we'll adapt to the requirements that are necessary for the KYC, not unlike the way Edge integrates with other exchange partners. So in our old app Airbits, we integrated Crack and Gladera, we integrated Biddy.com, and a few others, and all of them, given that they were fiat to crypto, and
definitely require KYC. Anytime you touch dirty old government money.
Exactly. Anytime you touch toilet paper, you're going to have to get KYC. And so we'll incorporate that. There are still some services that don't require KYC, or maybe their legal team determines that in the regions that they support it's not necessary. We'll look at incorporating some other services as well. Some may or may not require KYC. They might require it going down the line forward. But the nice thing about the architecture that we've built is that we stay clearly as the software provider, and we partner with these companies, and they're the ones that kind of determine what kind of friction is necessary for their user base. And of course, we're going to try to pick ones that have the least amount of friction.
Looking forward to decentralized exchanges.
Yeah,
But in the
no,
meantime,
exactly.
this is where we are. So.
Exactly. And we're also looking into decentralized exchanges. And I'm sure that Shapeshift is too. And if people don't remember last year around this time, maybe a little bit earlier in the summer last year,
Was
they
it
announced,
Prism?
It was Prism, yeah. They announced Prism, which was a fascinating thing for them to announce because it actually was a very much more distributed, decentralized project coming out of a more centralized company. And so
they're definitely thinking about
They're definitely
these
thinking
things.
about it. They just want to build stuff that uniquely people want, need, care about, and achieve certain goals. And so I've always, I've given this talk about, decentralization itself is not the goal. And it's achieving a certain goal that you want to.
Human liberty is the goal.
Human liberty being a goal, or I want security of the assets, non-custodial, and they achieve that goal with Shapeshift. Now, with respect of having to retract on one of the goals of financial privacy, they may be looking at other alternatives. And since liquidity is one of the biggest challenges for many decentralized exchanges, Shapeshift kind of has the liquidity, which
so
they can help transfer
if they were
over.
to come out with a decentralized something or other,
Yeah.
they're already in all the wallets. They could really.
Yeah, exactly. They can drive that liquidity almost automatically. So I think they're in a really good position. I wouldn't count them out. I saw tweets that are like, oh, Shapeshift is over. Right now that they've got accounts, I wouldn't count them as being over, and realize their API in that one specific service is one of the products. As many companies have, they can have multiple products, some of which can still achieve some of those goals that are compromised by the membership product. So one good thing though, you got to highlight the benefits. People will have higher limits now.
Well,
So-
there you go.
Exactly. Some people actually are fine giving up an email address and a phone number. They just want to be able to actually trade large amounts, and they're doing everything that they deem is fine for their own financial privacy, and they're fine with it. And so great. All right, you now have larger amounts. You get better customer support, as opposed to if you have an issue with a trade, maybe you didn't send a long enough mining fee and it's sitting stagnant and whatnot, and you need to call Shapeshift. They know who you are. It can easily identify your transaction history to help you with any transactions that you may have had problems with. And so admittedly, that is an improvement in UX. It's one of the challenges we have actually at Edge.
We don't really know anything our
yeah.
customers are doing, so when they call up our support, it's like,
well,
can you send us some logs maybe? We
Yeah,
can maybe
we've got
figure
some
out,
logs.
guess what's going on.
There's a public address here and there. We don't ask for a private key, so we're having to really almost Sherlock Holmes our way through working through user problems. Obviously, with an account and what Shapeshift has, they can get through that much more smoothly. So there is some benefit, admittedly. Yes, overall, it's unfortunate they don't want to make that kind of thing mandatory, but they've opted to go ahead and do so. But kind of recap, how is it going to affect people at Edge? Yes, when you go and use the application right now, you use what's called there's a little button on the bottom right. I think it's actually on the bottom left if you're in Israel. The whole Hebrew swaps around. But it's on the bottom. It says exchange. You pick a source and a destination wallet currency, and then it hunts down an order, and then you can go ahead and fulfill it with the amount that you want. In the future, that will go and hunt down orders from multiple providers. Some of them may or may not require KYC. Shapeshift will still be there as one of the main providers. But that's what you'll see, is that you'll have some cases where if you want to continue with an order at maybe a best price like what Shapeshift might offer, you may have to go down and create an account. Otherwise, opt to just simply use a different provider that doesn't require it.
Until all those providers go away. Well,
Until
who
all
knows?
they do.
Who knows,
Who
right?
knows? Yeah, who knows? Maybe
Maybe they're in
regulation
enough
changes.
of a different jurisdiction that that's not a
Exactly.
problem.
No, I can totally see. There's definitely some jurisdictions where if a company operated only in that space and they blacklisted IP addresses from places like the U.S., they could absolutely operate in the same model that Shapeshift is operating. And I think Shapeshift is, probably opting to say, well, for simplicity, we're not going to try to do any weird.
Well, they're in the Bay Area, right? So they're very much a U.S. company.
Actually, no, they're in Denver.
Really?
They're in Denver, which is still very much a U.S. company, but they're actually officially a Swiss company. So a lot of their staff is in Denver. They do have some staff in Switzerland, but they're officially a Swiss company.
I know that.
Yeah, yep. They're over there, over in kind of the crypto valley of Zug, I believe. Well, cool. So that's update on them. You'll see some changes coming out in the Edge app to incorporate the changes required by Shapeshift, and potentially some other exchange providers. Cool.
Well, now what do we talk about?
One interesting thing. This is probably not super well known, but some questions came across our path on different protocols. I think that's one thing that kind of gets covered in this QA, or different protocols, consensus algorithms and whatnot, proof of this, proof of that. One that came across was this idea of proof of honesty.
Proof
and,
of honesty.
And I haven't looked at this a whole lot, but I know you've kind of taken a peek at this one, William, so I'll let you kind of give people an understanding of what the heck this means. Where did it come from? Is it garbage? Is there some merit to it? I'll let you kind of take point on.
So there's an ICO going on right now.
Ah, really? Really? No way. There's no ICOs going on right now.
What? Private sale has begun. It's for this thing called Geek, Geeq.
Okay.
And they say the world's only bulletproof blockchain, and they have all these amazing claims on their front page.
I like their coffee, bulletproof.
Bulletproof coffee.
They must make a good blockchain.
Yeah. So they're saying that they have this amazing thing where in Bitcoin, as many people are aware, they relies kind of on the miners to figure out which transactions are happening. Mm-hmm. So if 51% of the miners decided to collude, they could rewrite the chain. They could have a particular history, and they could go back in time and then rewrite a different history and cause double spends and all this sort of thing to happen.
Right.
So that's no good, right? If 51% of the miners on a network are dishonest, the network falls apart and fails.
Right.
And this actually happened. What, Bitcoin Gold, was it?
Right, exactly. Rewound, I think,
20 blocks or something.
I thought it was even more than that, like 100 plus. But
so the scam was they would deposit money on the exchange, sell it for some other thing, and then they'd rewrite the history of the chain to then give themselves back the money that they deposited.
Right.
And it was okay for them to, well, not okay. It's like that's bad. But the reason that it made sense for them to do that was because they were able to just buy hash rate because it's a GPU mined coin. So you can just rent hash rate, for anything you like. So it was basically an economic. I spend $10,000 to make $10 million or whatever it ended up being, 100,000 or whatever. So Geek's like, okay, we need to fix this. So what we're going to do is we're going to have this system using game theory.
Basically an economic. I spend $10,000
what
to
happened?
make $10 million.
Sorry.
Oh, mute your laptop.
Yeah, mute my laptop. God, I got echo here.
So anyway.
Yeah, you spend a small amount of money for the hashing power that you rent. In exchange, you get the money that you actually deposit into exchange 100% back.
So they claim that using game theory that they could get it to 100%. So 99% of people are dishonest trying to rewrite the chain. It's still okay. Your money's still safe. That's their claim.
So obviously, claims are worth investigation and determination as to how strong they really are.
So I went ahead and read this white paper. I actually went ahead and read this white paper. Mm-hmm. And I don't think it works. I don't think it works in the same way that IOTA doesn't work. Mm-hmm. People say IOTA is this amazing thing. It's infinitely scalable. It does all this cool stuff. And then you actually look at the network as it's running today, and you realize it's actually relying on centralized servers. They couldn't make their ideas work. There were some logical flaws. Mm-hmm. And rather than do the honest thing and say, you know what? It didn't work out. The experiment was a failure. Let's refund everybody their money and shut down the ICO and call it good. Oh, well, let's keep pumping our coin even though it doesn't work.
Right.
And that's why I don't really like the IOTA project, because they didn't have the integrity to say, you know what, we couldn't get it to go. Our idea had a flaw, and we're just going to shut it down. Instead, they keep pumping their garbage coin.
Yeah, they basically took consensus and fully put it into a single server.
Yeah.
Right.
And that's how it's operating today. And I feel like this is kind of one of those kind of coins.
Got it. So what out of reading the white paper kind of brought about that sentiment? Like, what were the key buzzwords that didn't work out?
So what they're saying, and the description of their algorithm is very simple. It's you, the user, on your smartphone or on your desktop PC or whatever, whoever's using the currency to do transactions, monitors the chain. And if you see something that looks dishonest, you reject it.
Okay. And this is an end user, not a full node.
A full node end user.
Okay, a full node. Okay.
Or if you're on a smartphone, you could do less validation. You can set your level of validation.
Got it.
Well, here's the problem. When a double spend takes place, both halves of the double spend look legitimate. There's nothing about either side that makes it better than the other side.
Right.
So if I present you with two blocks that have the same timestamp and the same contents, except for one double spent transaction, and I give it to you and I say, pick which one is honest.
Right.
how can you possibly make that decision? Because they're identical in every way. It's just one has a different address than the other in terms of where it's going to.
I know a naive response, and I've had this discussion with people, a naive response is, well, it's the one that came afterwards. But you realize that the one that came after is the one that's the dishonest one. But you realize that in a distributed network, for one node, they could receive one transaction first, and a different node receive that same transaction second.
Right. So what happens? I receive 2 blocks with identical timestamps, whichever one I received first. So if I'm in Asia and you're in the United States, and somebody broadcasts the fraudulent transaction first, one side in Asia first and the other side in the United States first, I'm going to see the Asian one first because I'm closer to that broadcast.
Right, exactly.
And they're going to cross in the middle, and then you're going to see the other one later, and I'm going to see the other one later.
Right. Exactly. In a way, it comes to the point of saying that there is no such thing as a fraudulent transaction.
That's
right.
Yeah.
Right. There's no such thing as a fraudulent. They're all transactions that conform to the consensus layer are valid. And you just simply have to pick one. And it's just a matter of everyone in the network picking the same one.
So I could say, well, fine, I'm just going to stick to my guns. The first one I see is the first one that happens, right? And you say, I'm going to do the same thing. The first one I see is the first one that happens. Well, great. As soon as I do a double spend, I fork the network into 2 points.
Exactly.
Because this half can't agree with that half because they saw it.
They simply say, nope, I saw it first. Nope, I saw it first.
Yeah.
Right.
So
that fundamental flaw in the architecture.
Yeah. There's no way around that. That I am aware of.
Well, I mean, that's why we have mining.
Right. The whole point of mining is to say, we can't agree on times because time is relative, right? What things take time to travel. It's like Einstein's theory of relativity. It's fundamental of physics of our universe do not allow simultaneity.
And it's funny because the name of the consensus protocol is proof of honesty, and you can actually have all honest nodes validating transactions, and they still wouldn't agree.
They still don't agree.
And fundamental flaw, which unfortunately could still make a successful ICO and a successful coin that hits the top 50, 30, 20. And as you can see, this industry isn't looking closely at the technology for a lot of these chains.
So even though, so that is actually an interesting point. So even though they have this huge logical fallacy kind of at the heart of their system, where it will not resist double spends. As soon as they bring it up, they will have double spends and the system will fall apart. And it just won't work. And they will find some way, I'm sure, to kind of fix the problem.
Right.
Put a Band-Aid over it, right?
And if they're able to Band-Aid it somehow, some way, and still achieve a distributed aspect of consensus, then hats off to them.
Or even if they secretly have a central server that monitors all transactions.
If they do that, then they've effectively sold us on something that they didn't build.
Right. But the point is that IOTA already pulled this scam, and they're still in like the top 10 or top
20 or
something like that, right? Yeah. So this could be a heck of an ICO, right?
Right. It could still be a great pump and dump.
Great pump and dump. It's got all the buzzwords. It's got everything you could ever want. Amazing like consensus algorithm. It just doesn't work. But you know what? Maybe the other greater fool doesn't know that.
Right. Exactly.
So I would not personally invest in this, but I mean, if I was more of an opportunist, if I was more of an opportunist willing to scam people, then I might get on board with this.
Yeah, knowing that there's someone else that'll probably buy the coin off you.
Yeah,
which we tend to not be the types of, but a little bit. We're trying to show our proof of honesty at that point. But yep, it's another. It was one of the questions that came across. We're like, oh, what exactly is this? And I'm sure there could be 10 of these that we could analyze for 10 minutes each. Few people in this world have the patience like William has to actually dive into the into the white paper and understand some of the terminology, but I thank him for that. Oh, cool. Also, another fascinating thing that came across this week. This one's always interesting to me. This is one of the fascinating stories about cryptocurrency is the question of its origins. Like who did it come from? Who is Satoshi? Who are Satoshi? And just to throw another wrinkle into that drama that I'm sure one day will become quite a bit of a Hollywood masterpiece. I'm hoping. Don't mess it up. Whoever actually takes this on, don't mess it up. This is just an amazing story. Even if you create something that's completely fiction, it's the fact that we haven't proven anything yet means that everyone will take your fiction and go maybe. Right? You can't really argue it. So it's kind of like, well, who killed Kennedy? You can write a movie about it, and everyone will go. Maybe.
Sounds plausible to me.
Sounds plausible to me. And so a great long kind of story got published by gentleman Phil Wilson. I've read part of it, and it's a compelling story. But I know you've kind of covered the entire blog or document and story that he wrote, and it's an interesting story.
It took a lot of hours. It felt like reading a short, like soft cover novel.
Yeah, no, exactly, and it was entertaining, if anything.
Yeah,
it was just entertaining, if anything. It's just why it made me rekindle the idea of like, wow, we need a movie for Satoshi. You know, like we need an honestly good, well-made, you know, Hollywood movie about him. And this is actually a good start.
Yeah, yeah.
Cool.
So, yeah, it's interesting. I think this story, what was it, 2016 or something this came out?
The paper that he had,
yeah,
I thought it was just last year.
Or was it 20?
Oh, no, this one I thought just came out, but he had been, actually, I can't remember the exact date. I feel like this just came out recently because it was only covered by media just recently.
Well, I thought that was the point, was that this thing had been published back in 2016 and nobody paid attention to it.
And media just suddenly covered it.
He wrote it, he put it on Bitcoin Talk, and got like no traction, and it just kind of vanished.
Got it.
And then only...
We'll put a link to this in the YouTube channel, by the way, and on Twitter in case anyone's wondering. We'll put links to stuff on the YouTube channel for everything we chatted about.
So a little bit of backstory about why now, right?
Mm-hmm.
Why now that this thing that's been out here for years suddenly gets traction is Craig Wright is kind of part of this story.
Yep.
He's not named by name in this actual document, but if you click on some of the links, you'll actually see that, oh, this is Craig's stuff.
Got it.
And Craig Wright has been making quite a bit of stir in the Bitcoin Cash community, like a lot of stir.
The whole crypto community, actually. He just kind of throws everyone under the bus.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, what was it? Who's the guy, the yours.org guy?
Ryan X. Charles.
He made a video about it saying, like, why is it interesting that Craig Wright is Satoshi or whatever? And,
well, he believes that Craig Wright is Satoshi.
But he starts off by saying, very first thing in the video is like, Craig Wright is
he's a dick.
He's a dick, right? And he knows he's a dick because
I think he's a dick as well, but
nevertheless, here's why I think.
Yeah.
So I think he's making quite a bit of waves, and because this story includes him, it's like, oh, now this is relevant because if he is who he says he is, if Craig Wright is Satoshi, then this is an interesting element of that story.
And then just to kind of give people context, in this story, Phil Wilson is pretty much alluding to the fact that, yes, Craig Wright is a third of Satoshi. Phil Wilson is 1/3 of it as well. And then the other gentleman, Dave Kleiman, the American, was another third. And so that's, in the storyline, you can pretty much conclude that that's what he's claiming, is that the three of them encompassed Satoshi. But what's interesting to me was the breakdown. Right, the breakdown.
Who's the brains and who's the brawn?
Yeah, exactly. Who's the brain, who's the bronze, who's the personality, and who is the stubborn, blah, 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 and who contributed what into the ecosystem of Bitcoin, because that's what I think makes this story kind of unique.
So I want to just ask, what is your opinion about Craig? Do you think I definitely
think he's a dick. That I would agree with Ryan on. And so like I was actually introduced to Craig over Twitter from a mutual friend who said, oh, wow, Craig, I have Paul, I really think this guy is it. I think it's really him. He seems really smart, and he goes way back. And then I only had a few words of discussion with him on Twitter when nobody knew who he was.
Back before he had claimed to have the keys.
This was, I think, in 2015. You know, and he just wasn't a name that people really recognized way before Bitcoin Cash. And then he actually had his first appearance at a conference via Skype at a conference in Vegas that a friend, Steve Michaels, had organized. So he was on a panel with, I think, the very first conference that Nick Szabo showed up to, live. So it was Nick Szabo on this panel, and Craig was on this panel. And my take whenever I listen to Craig's, he's very stern about what he feels, and he's willing to throw people under the bus and disagree with people, which I guess I'm okay with. That's fine. I don't like that you're kind of a dick about it. But what I found is, and maybe he's one of those maybe he's that intelligent, but he makes a lot of claims without a strong foundation behind it. It's like, this is the way it is. This works. Don't you know anything? Blah, blah, blah. And those tend to be the kind of stances that I don't hold very strong in my heart, because I'd like people to have some kind of backing. Admit when there's something that they say that doesn't have.
Here's why.
Yeah. If you're going to tell me I'm wrong, okay, but tell me why.
And I actually really enjoy it. I've had long conversations on Reddit, like pages and pages, and it's really fun to debate with someone who disagrees with you, because they come up with an argument, you think about it, you're like,
exactly.
I hadn't thought about that. Maybe I'll.
Yeah, that's why there's debate clubs in high school, right? Because debating is somewhat a healthy thing. It's a thinking challenge. It's like puzzle solving. You're trying to stand some ground. But I don't feel like you can have a good debate with Craig Wright.
If you try to debate him, it's like, you're wrong, bam.
Yeah, exactly. You're wrong, you're an idiot, bam. And it's not unique to him. This is very common in the crypto space, that you can't debate some people because they just don't have the ability to dig deeper to justify.
Reevaluate their beliefs
Yeah,
and come up
exactly.
with new arguments.
Yeah,
and-
they have almost a religious stance. And so that's what it feels like. Maybe he actually has the arguments in his head and he's not actually able to bring them forth. Like, he's not a good presenter of arguments. That's a possibility. But to answer your question of like, okay, what is my general thought of him, is I have a hard time knowing exactly what's going on in his head because he can't present it well. He's unable to present it well. The kind of harsh personality comes out beforehand. And the stuff that he does present, from what I see, doesn't have grounds and backing. Very few of it does. Once again, that doesn't mean that he's not Satoshi.
Right.
Or hasn't
And
contributed to it.
that's the thing is, right, being Satoshi and being an asshole are not mutually exclusive.
Right, and actually, if we agree, or if you can believe that Satoshi is multiple people, then even the ability to describe what you're doing well isn't necessary to be part of Satoshi.
Right, because he didn't necessarily write the white paper,
Yeah,
right? If there's a team of people.
Exactly. So he could have been a contributor to
So,
the project.
my take on this is, suppose Satoshi, the real Satoshi, whoever that is, were to come out tomorrow, guns blazing, all the signatures you could ever want, proof, all the email archives, PGP keys, you name it, right?
Right.
What would change? Ideally, nothing, right? Bitcoin is supposed to be this decentralized system. It shouldn't matter who Satoshi is.
Interestingly enough, I wonder, well, the one question that I used to say that as well, like a couple of years ago, like, well, nothing's going to change. Like, we've got the developers, they're working on the code, it's all open source. It's not like some secret inside of
Well, that would be the ideal
Bitcoin.
situation is nothing changes.
Is that nothing changes, right? However,
In
what's
reality.
interesting is I'm curious as to whether or not the opinion of any one of the people that are part of Satoshi, if their opinion were to align with the very diverse opinions now that the industry has.
What
as
if
to what is
Satoshi thought that Lightning Network was the way to go?
Right.
What if he
said,
thought
this is-
Bitcoin Cash was the way to go?
Right.
What if he thought Ethereum was the best
Exactly.
thing?
What if he thought that you should have a huge amount of scripting opcodes and Bitcoin should be able to do smart contracts? That is the interesting, is it would people in their kind of really die-hard religion start to rethink what they've thought? Or will they just throw Satoshi under the bus and go, where have you been? You're irrelevant, and so you're not, get it,
I think what would happen is if he came out guns blazing, keys everywhere, people would say that there was something wrong with the proof because he doesn't agree with me, therefore he can't be Satoshi.
It's funny because I think there was another tweet that I saw in response to Ryan X. Charles's video about Craig Wright, and in the tweet it says, "I like Satoshi. I don't like Craig Wright. Craig Wright can't be Satoshi." And so like there's probably that hidden emotion happening inside of people, even though that equation isn't in their head, it's in their kind of subconscious.
Yeah.
And so
well, the other thing is there would be a terrible risk because what if he stepped forward and said, I have the keys and I am, and everybody believes him. Mm-hmm. And he says, well, here's what we're going to do. Here's how we're going to fix Bitcoin. He proposes some kind of hard fork. And people go with that because he's Satoshi and he must know, right?
Right.
Then he would have control over the network in the same way Vitalik controls Ethereum. Right. And that is not a good situation to be in. You don't want one like super figurehead founder guy like controlling and running.
I'm pretty sure at
things.
this point, because the industry has been now, 8 years running without Satoshi's input, known Satoshi's input, I think his input would have a significantly lowered amount of weight, especially if it's proven that Craig Wright.
Well, yeah. But that's actually why I bring that up, because right now Craig Wright is proposing a hard fork for Bitcoin Cash.
Right.
And he's calling it Bitcoin Satoshi's vision. And I would say his claim to be Satoshi is actually a very good reason not to follow his fork. Because if we follow his fork, if we set this precedent, he's Satoshi, or we think that may be true, and therefore we're going to listen to what he says.
Or he's only 1/3 of it, which
we're kind of reestablishing him in the same way that like Vitalik is on that pedestal, right? Like that would not be good.
No, while I might not agree with this demographic of the population, there are people that I think actually do follow in.
They have
Craig's belief that these are the right things to do, regardless of him being
right.
not. They don't necessarily believe he's Satoshi,
right?
But they think that he's a smart guy and he's saying good things and they like their goals, especially if those people aren't diving deep into kind of the technical details of his.
Well,
his
I mean,
words.
if you like the technical details of his work, then propose it to the community in a non-contentious way. Kind of bring it up like, hey, maybe we should go to this size of block. And like, okay, what's a good roadmap for that? Instead of trying to bundle it all together, say I'm Satoshi, therefore you must do what I say, and if you don't, I will.
Yeah.
What's the Monty Python? I will fart in your general direction.
Yeah. And so, I mean, that's the high-level gist of this story that came out.
So I guess we should kind of talk about the story now that we've
Let's
talked.
cover the story a little bit.
So
'cause this is a
basically,
fascinating one.
this guy, Phil Wilson, claims that Craig Wright was trying to come up with an eCache, and he was doing it the same way everyone who had done before and failed was doing it. He was trying to have a central server and all this stuff. And he's like, no, your central server will get shut down. Just project can't work. I'm not going to participate. And then this Phil Wilson guy starts thinking about it. He's like, wait a moment here. What if we tried this? What if we tried that? And he came up with the idea of proof of work. And so he goes back to Craig and says, hey, Craig, I figured it out. In fact, I figured it out, and I want you to join my cryptocurrency project. So he kind of like turned the tables. Like, instead of helping you, Craig, finish your white paper, no, you need to come and work on my project. So he kind of flips the tables on his head. And then he describes proof of work and then gets Craig to do the coding. And then in the whole process of this coding, Dave Kleinman's kind of like their intermediate, like their go-to kind of guy who because they're both like very hothead personalities and kind of like smooths things over, right?
Got it.
So that's kind of his story. So Dave is kind of the voice of Satoshi. He was the one who was on the forums. He was the one all the emails went through. Like
And hence the disappearance.
Right.
The sudden disappearance, and suddenly you just don't hear from him.
Right. Because Dave is the voice, and Phil is the brains who came up with proof of work, and Craig is the coder who came up with the implementation. That's the story.
It's a story. Yep.
And in this story, he has lots of neat little details, like why are there 21 million? Well, originally there was supposed to be 42 million, because 42 is the answer to life, the universe, and everything. It's a geek reference.
Yep.
But there was some problem with the code, and instead of being 100 coins per block in the initial emission, it was only 50. So they somehow cut something in half, and then now the answer was wrong.
It was now 21 million.
21 was just half of 42, because the original block rule was supposed to be 100, not 50.
Got it. And I think we had talked about as well that, Satoshi was early on credited with this decision of 21 million being a very good decision because of how it lines up with machine
Double
language.
precision floating point
Yeah,
numbers.
exactly. You can actually fit that into a double precision.
So
64-bit.
JavaScript works really well with Bitcoin
Exactly.
because it just isn't underneath the limit.
Exactly. And you're not having to expand to the larger numbers that machines today aren't capable of, 64-bit machines aren't capable of. And so that's kind of a, whoa, how did Satoshi realize this, blah, blah, blah. Did he think about that? Was that the factor in there being 21 million? Maybe
that was
not.
why Craig changed it in half.
That's
Who
possibly
knows?
why Craig may have changed it.
But again, this is all a story.
It's all
right?
a
We
story.
have no way of knowing if this is true. There's no keys. There's no signatures. There's nothing that connects us to reality.
Yeah.
And in fact, many people have gone through this with a fine-tooth comb and said, "Well, this doesn't line up with reality. This dates don't work on this domain name, and some other things." Right.
Yeah. Possibly good fiction.
It could just be a really good work of fan fiction, which is still worth reading because it's entertaining. I find.
I found it was interesting with some of the stuff that does align with reality, such as the incentives. Like we had talked about how right now the Bitcoin Cash community is deciding on an opcode, on whether an opcode gets added to the ecosystem. And I believe it's Craig that's very against adding these new opcodes that are significantly different from what crypto was built on. Might that be because he was the one that implemented the original opcodes and having some friction against change for what he had done? Hey, that's my work. I don't know. Yeah. It's speculation.
It's all speculation, but it's
all speculation.
Darn good story.
It's
Either way,
story.
it's a darn good story.
Definitely a recommended read, and I'd love to hear people's take on that as to whether or not it's A, somewhat aligned with what they think is happening in reality, and B, was it even entertaining to read? Was it a fun read? And so, cool. All right.
So we want to go through our
I think we're capped out of time now, but we'll
Yeah.
just cover really quickly just kind of what we're up to and future events. And so I'll be heading over to Consensus in Singapore. That's going to be on the 19th and 20th of this month. So it's be leaving end of next week. So if you're over at Consensus in Singapore, shoot me a line on Twitter or Facebook if we happen to be connected and say hi. We can, grab a quick coffee while we're over there. As well, a lot of our team is going to be headed over to the Texas Bitcoin Conference. This is kind of like our 1-year anniversary of Edge. We announced our rebranding from Airbits to Edge
That's right, it was
at
in
this
Texas.
conference. Yeah, it was in Texas last year, so a good handful of us are going to be going there again, and that's going to be in mid to late October, around, I believe, the 24th or so. As well, DevCon 4 right after that, so I'll be headed there, maybe with one other person, not decided at this point yet. That's the Ethereum DevCon in Prague. Excited to go back to Prague. And then I'll be over at World CryptoCon as well in early November to kind of round out this somewhat of a road trip with Texas Bitcoin Conference, DevCon 4, and World CryptoCon. So definitely come by, say hi, meet us in person. if you'd like. And otherwise, catch us again on the Friday of next week.
Every Friday we're
Every
here.
Friday,
Well,
live
not
Q&A.
us, but somebody will be here.
Somebody from our team will be here. Maybe you can hit us on Twitter. Look at our website, edge.app. You can see our whole team is on there. And ping on Twitter who you'd like to speak at the live Q&A. And so it's sometimes me when I'm in town, but I'm sometimes gone half the time. But I'm sure you'd like to hear from some of the other team members. And we've got people doing dev work, business development, content creation, accounting, support, you name it. Ping us who you'd like to see. And until then, talk to you guys later.
All right.
Bye-bye.
See you later, Internet.